Good morning. My name is Takiwa Smith, founder and executive director of Science, Engineering, and Mathematics Link Incorporated, and I want to welcome you to our fifth annual DMV STEM Career Fair. The STEM Career Fair is the signature program of our Math and Science Career Academy that we host annually in both of the areas that we serve. In October, in the DMV, and in April in Atlanta. The purpose of this event is to provide and families to get a chance to meet and interact virtually this year with STEM professionals and be able to learn about STEM careers by having opportunities to speak with STEM professionals, to see firsthand what they do, as well as ask any questions about their career, what they do every day, how did they get there, all of those things. And for the second year in a row, because of the global pandemic, and to keep our volunteers safe and you safe, we are hosting it virtually. But it doesn't change the same intent where we have amazing members of the STEM community making time in their schedule to share with you their passion and expertise for STEM. And so we hope that, well, we don't hope, I know that this will be a great day for you to learn as much as you can about STEM careers, possibly meet someone that is doing what you think you want to do based on what you're interested in and what you're good at, and excuse me, and find a positive adult role model. So before we get started, I want to share a little bit about SEM Link and our programs. So SEM Link is an organization that I founded in 2005. I'm a chemical engineer, and I wanted kids to learn about STEM careers and feel confident that they could pursue STEM careers by providing different opportunities for them to meet and interact with STEM professionals so they could engage in hands-on activity, get supported as they engage in STEM research, such as when they participate in science fairs, and just get confidence in their ability to become and pursue STEM careers because they met someone that is pursuing that career that not only shared with them what they do, but most importantly, made them believe that it was possible by encouraging words or just showing a path for pursuing a STEM career and teaching you how to pursue a STEM career. We have two core programs: our experimental design program, which in a nutshell teaches kids how to read, write, do, and talk STEM. This program supports young STEM researchers through providing judges for STEM competitions at schools, school districts, and the community. We have an experimental design online course for high school students that teaches them how to conduct research as a research scientist, starting from selecting your project, going all the way to when you prepare to present your research, and teaching you important skills such as designing your experiment before you start, doing scholarly research, utilizing your lab notebook to collect data when you're collecting your experiment, data for your experiment, all things that research scientists do. This program, we also have our STEM Journal Club, which is for high school students that teaches them how to read and analyze STEM journals and discuss STEM topics with various audiences. And then we have our newest program, TikTok STEM, which encourages you to communicate STEM on social media. So if you're all making videos about exploring STEM around you, go ahead and post and tag us for TikTok STEM. In our program, Math and Science Career Academy, which is what this event is a part of, is where you get an opportunity to meet and interact with the STEM community in various capacities, to learn about STEM careers and engage in hands-on activities and view interactive demos in your classrooms, community, and out of school time programs. So, what I said, this event, our STEM Career Fair, is the signature event for that program. We also have our teen science cafes for teens to explore STEM careers and get an opportunity to talk with STEM professionals. We have our STEM in the City workshops, which expose you to earth and environmental sciences by learning how these fields and how science impact our everyday lives and in our communities. And we have STEM theme week celebrations, such as National Chemistry Week, National Engineering Day, where we have special events. We go into classrooms to do hands-on activities, and we have special highlights on social media, such as our I Instagram stories and posts just to give you facts about those STEM fields. And we also have our Instagram takeovers, where a STEM professional or a graduate student take over our IG and let you know about their career journey, what the day in the life of their work every day in their field, and the current trends in their field. And we end that takeover with a live Instagram video interview with our program coordinator, Carlin Pounders, and the STEM community. It's a member of the STEM community that is taking over our Instagram that day. So I just encourage you to, we have some great STEM professionals lined up that have planned their day to create this experience for you virtually. Our program coordinator, Carlin Pounders, will be managing the chat. So be sure to have your questions in the chat, any comments. Just say where you are, what you like about STEM, where you live, and be sure to ask questions. After each speaker finishes, Carlin will come in and do a Q&A with the speaker to answer your questions and just give a little more detail about what the STEM professional does and any questions you may have about their field. So we are going to get started. I am going to welcome our first speaker, Miss Dorothy Phoenix. And so the cool thing about Dorothy Phoenix is that she is a computer scientist, but she is going to teach you how to code and make your own game. So Carlin is putting resources in the chat that Miss Phoenix will guide you through as she starts her presentation to teach you about coding and gaming. So I am going to let Miss Phoenix in now and get started. Good morning, Dorothy.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks again for having me and for putting this event together. I'm really excited to be here this morning and to talk to you about programming, computer science, and video games. So, as we mentioned, I am a computer scientist and software developer, but I'm also a game developer, and I have my own game company called Cloudy Heaven Games, and I have a couple of projects that I'm working on right now. So what I want to do today is I want to talk to you about a couple of specific areas about game development. This is really a huge field, and I could probably talk about it for hours, but I've put together a couple of resources that I'm going to share with you today that you can interact with as we're going through this talk. And you can also go back afterwards and continue to interact with it and learn in more detail. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's even though game development and computer science and all that is a huge topic, what we're going to be focusing on today is mainly the idea behind game design, So that's things like coming up with the rules of a game, designing the experience of a game, and basically just making a game fun, right? So that's the first area that we're going to look at. And then the second area that we're going to look at is actually coding, all right, which is writing the instructions on the computer that makes the computer game, whether it's on a PC or a laptop like I have right now, or a smartphone, or even, like a Nintendo Switch or a console like Xbox or PlayStation or something like that. The code is really what actually makes the game work and run and do things. Okay, so if you look here in the chat, the first link that you're going to want to look at is the interactive tutorials. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen really quickly here. And one of the things that you're going to want to think about is which browser you're using, because I'm going to be sharing. I'm going to be showing you this first link here, this interactive coding and game tutorials link. This is in Chrome, so if you have a different browser and if something doesn't necessarily look like it should or doesn't seem like it's working, you can put a message in the chat, or afterwards I will give you my email address so you can get in contact with me and just let me know, hey, there's an issue, can you help me fix it? Okay, so this is the first resource. As you can see, it's an introduction to coding and game development, and it's a set of interactive tutorials that you can do. All right. So this page has a couple of different things for you. So let's go ahead and actually, we're going to scroll down a little bit and look at this section called Play and Edit a Game. Okay. So you can click on the image to go to the game that we're going to look at here. It's a browser-based game. And when you get to the screen, you're going to see a message that says game over, click screen to play. Okay, and that's okay. Just click the screen to start playing. But first, before we actually start playing, let's kind of go over what I want you to be looking for. So as you're playing this game, I want you to think about things like what makes the game fun or what makes it not so fun. Is there something that you would improve on? Is the game too hard or is it too easy? If it is, how can we make it harder or make it easier? Does the game look good? Just things like that. You really want to start looking at this from the perspective of, if I was a game developer, if I was a designer, how would I make this game and what changes would I make? Okay, so that's really the getting your game design thinking cap on here. So if we go ahead, there's a couple of tabs down here. If we look at the How to Play tab, basically the idea of this very simple game is that you have 3 spaceships down here, okay? And when you press play or when you start the game, you see I have these aliens that come down from the top of the screen, right? Now my goal is to try to click on the aliens to destroy them so that they don't destroy my ships, okay? And if all of my ships get taken out, then I get a game over. And you see at the top here, there's also a timer. So if you can make it until the countdown timer hits 0, then you've won the game, and you can play again to try to beat your high score, okay? So the idea behind this is to make it a really, really simple game so you can focus on some of the concepts without like a more complicated game, all right? Now let's actually talk about what else we can learn from this game. So when you're looking at this game later on your own, you're going to want to look at the Learn tab, which you see there's a drop down that gives you some text and some verbiage about how this game was made. It's not a detailed tutorial, not like a complete tutorial, but it gives you a good introduction to some of the concepts with game development. For instance, you might have heard of different programming languages, right? Like maybe C++ and Java and JavaScript and whatnot. This game was made in HTML, specifically HTML5, and it also uses JavaScript and a little bit of something called CSS. Okay, so that's going into detail about that is kind of out of the scope of our talk this morning. But if you're interested in that, you can go back and read about that and see how all of that works. Okay, and there's some other really good information down here that hopefully will give you sort of an overview, an introduction, a taste of game development. All right. Now, I think what you'll really find fun here is this Edit Game tab. So when I click on this, you see I have more drop downs, and there's some interactive areas here where you can actually change elements of the game. And there's some guidance here to help you to do that. So you might be thinking, okay, so this game was really easy because the enemies were moving really slowly and it wasn't really that hard to click on them, right? So I could beat this time limit, no problem. So let's think about how we can change that. Now, one of the things we can do is we can, in the games, there's something called variables, which are different type data that the game can use, right? And the value of this data can change or be used throughout the game, right? So we have a variable called enemy speed. Now, if you've done math in school and you've done some algebra and you've done like x equals so and so or y equals so and so, x and y are variables, right? They have names x and y. Now, variables in games and programming is kind of similar to that. Okay, so our variable here is called enemy speed. Now let's try making it a little faster. And when you make a change, you can make changes in these text fields here. And when you finish making a change, what you want to do is click on this Try Code Changes button, and that will apply the code changes to the game, and you don't have to reload or anything. Now notice I made the enemy speed faster, and it seems like the enemies were coming down a bit faster, but maybe there weren't as many, right? Oh, well, now it seems like they really kind of picked up there. Now, if you feel like, okay, maybe I want them a little bit faster, but I need more of them, there's another variable we can change called chance, which is like the rate, the enemy rate. How often do the enemies show up on the screen? So right now, every second that passes in the game, there's a 1 out of 20 chance that that an enemy will appear on the screen. So if you're more used to thinking of math in terms of percentages, that's a 5% chance that a new enemy will show up on the screen. Now let's try and make this a little bit more dense as far as the number of enemies. So right now, we said it's about 5%. Now if I do 11 out of 20, or maybe let's do 12 out of 20, that's in percentages, that's about, let's see, 60% chance now that a new enemy will show up. And let's see what happens now. So I clicked on Try Code Changes. Oh, and now look at that. Now there's way too many enemies. So now maybe it's a little too difficult. Okay. So what I want you to be, have your design thinking cap on to figure out what's the optimal rate of enemies, what's the optimal speed, and look at some of these other options. Like there's an enemy X motion. We're not quite sure what that does. It was false before, but if we change it to true, let's see. Okay, so now we see that changing that variable made the enemies come in from the side of the screen too. So let's make it a bit slower so you can see again here. So now it's a little more difficult from that perspective because they can actually come in from the side and kind of loop around. Okay, so this is a really simple example game, and like I said, there's other things that you can change here, but the point here is to make it simple so that you can think about what goes into making this game better. And that can include making it easier or harder. That can include things like making it look better. So, maybe I want to change the color of the background. So let's see, right now it's all white here. And if you read through this, it'll give you some guidance about how to change some of the colors. So let's see, let's try making this a little more colorful here. And if we try the code changes, so now we can change the colors, and there's guidance about how to find other colors that you can do. Think about things like, okay, well, now that I changed the color, Is it easier or harder to see the game text? Because part of game design and experience is making sure that your players have an easy enough time to actually be able to play the game without running into issues like, well, I can't really see this information that well, or it doesn't really show up that well on my screen. So that's another important part of game design too. Okay, and the last thing we want to think about with game design that I'm going to mention here is look at this how to play. Very important part of putting together a game is sitting down and detailing what the actual game rules are and what the player is trying to achieve. All right, and making sure that you can express that to the player. Because see, if we hadn't had this here, if we didn't have this section, and you just came onto this page, you probably wouldn't really know what to do, and that would be pretty frustrating, right? So that's another important aspect of game design that you want to think about. Okay, great. So I encourage you to go and play around with this on your own time, and also take a look at this resources tab. All right, so there's other resources here, and I'm going to be adding to these as well. But if you want to learn more about different game topics, since I assume that most of us are in the DC area, there's a list of books that I know are at the DC Public Library, and some of them are electronic and digital format, and some of them you have to actually go and pick up a physical copy. If you're not in the DC area, the library call number is listed too, so you should be able to search for them in any library. Or you can also go to Amazon or any other bookseller and search by title. All right, so that's the first link that I have for you. The next set of links here, if we go back to the introduction and to game development interactive tutorials page here, you'll see that there's a section called interactive P5JS tutorials. All right, so we already mentioned JavaScript, which is partly what this game uses. Now there's a special JavaScript library called P5JS. All right, and what we have here is, again, this is a new concept that I came up with. So I'd appreciate feedback on if this works for you or not, or if you have any trouble. So please do let me know. But basically, if you click on, right now we have screen size and background color and variables. So I'm going to just click on the screen size and background color, and that will open up in a new page an interactive, small, bite-sized tutorial that you can look at. Okay, and you might have something that says allow cookies, so just allow all, and just press play here, and you might see if you're in Chrome, you might not this might not work. So there's also a link where you can open this in a new window. Okay, and basically what you want to do is read through the tutorial, and then it will guide you through making some changes to the code, so you can learn about how to change colors. Okay, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about that because I know we have a limited amount of time, but it's something that I want you to know is available, so you can start learning some coding concepts in bite-sized chunks. Okay. And the last thing on this page that I have here, if you're really ready to learn to build a game from scratch, here's a free YouTube video tutorial series that I did that goes into more detail about how to make a game in JavaScript and P5JS. Okay, and the last thing I have, the last link that we have in chat here is an in-progress document on Google Docs that has a lot more information and resources about how to get started in game development and things that you can do. And I'm continuing to update this, but I just want you to have that as well. Okay, so let me stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to give you a chance to ask questions. Okay, and the other thing, is that, like I said, I know that this was a lot of work, a lot of material, but go ahead and take a look at this on your own own time, and feel free to ask me questions. So the classes that you might need to take to prepare for this type of career, that's a great question. Okay. So one of the things that you'll notice here, and let me go ahead and share my screen again one more time. Really take a look at this. Um, Take a look at this document that I linked, this Google Doc here. Can everyone see my screen? I don't know if my screen is sharing or not. But if it's not, still take a look at this Google document that I linked, because if you scroll down, there's a couple of things here. First of all, there's a careers and game and computer science and game dev link recommended in classes and activities, and there's slides that you can look at for that. And actually, if you go to if you go to this YouTube channel that I have here, where with the tutorial on my playlist, on my channel, there's actually a video of a video replay of this webinar. Okay, and that goes into a lot more detail about the classes that you can take and activities that you can do. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'll update the link here in this document. But the other thing in this document, if you scroll all the way, scroll throughout, there are different job roles that are involved with computer science and game design, like game designer and programmer. And there's some classes listed that you might want to take there. So what classes can you take in school and whatnot? Okay.
Wow, that is great, Dorothy, how you have already thought about the resources that youth can take advantage of if they want to follow the same STEM pathway. My question to you is, where does your inspiration and passion come for this STEM area?
Well, I've always really liked math and science and learning and whatnot. But, as anyone in my family will tell you, ever since, even before I was in preschool, back in like the mid 80s, when we just had like Nintendo and Atari and all that stuff, once I started playing on those games, it's like you could not get me off of those games. So, I'm sure that some of the parents out there who might be thinking, well, my kid spends all their time playing games, right? You can actually make a career of it, and it can be something that's fun as well. So that's really my inspiration.
That's great. Of course, I think anything that is also fun will lead kids in the right direction to something that they'll find really fulfilling. I think it's also interesting how you did bring up the math aspect in this particular presentation. I've heard a lot of things about game development, but I believe this is the first time that I've heard someone make the connection of variables, which are used in math, as well as you mentioned X and Y.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that you always hear students talking about, why do I have to learn math in school? I'm never going to need this. So I think whenever I do any kind of game development, I'm always in my head thinking my math teachers, because it really does. It really is important to have those math concepts, even if you're doing something as simple as moving a character across the screen. I don't know if everyone on this call has gotten to the point in their math careers where they've worked with like graphs and like the X and Y coordinates on like the Cartesian graph and whatnot. But think about how you can use X and Y to denote the position on a graph, right? It's the same thing on your computer screen. If you think of your computer screen as like a graph, in two directions, then you're going back to sort of like that X and Y math. And when you have to figure out, well, how far should the character move, you have what amount of time has passed in the game, and based on that, what should the player's new position be, because you have to add the distance that they've moved to their old position, right? So even something as simple as that, and we can also talk about like adding scores and things like that, or If you have like a game with a more complicated score structure where it's like you get bonuses and now you have to like multiply, you get like twice the amount of points or something like that. So pay attention in math if you want to do computer science and games.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dorothy, for your demonstration and your presentation. And we'll be heading to our next one.
Virtual world, remember to take off of mute. Thank you so much, Dorothy, again, and thank you so much, Carlin, for engaging us in a great Q&A about gaming. So I am going to bring on our next speaker, Mr. Sir Bernard of Medtronic. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Bernard. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay.
Let me just start by introducing myself. My name is Sir Bernard. I work in the healthcare industry. I am a mechanical engineer by trade, but I also hold I got an MBA with a concentration in finance, and I also hold graduate certificates in financial management and leadership development. Just a little bit about my background. I've always had a passion for STEM, mathematics, but I really wanted to understand how E equals MC squared can also equal dollar signs. And that is very important to industry. And so that's why I pursued an MBA. If I can just share my screen here. Let me share. Share screen. All right. Okay, so I started out my career as a mechanical engineer doing industrial sales, and gradually...
Your screen hasn't shared yet, so try again so I can add it, see it.
It says share. Yep.
It should be, it's not showing up in my backstage yet. So take it out and then try again and see.
Okay. There it is. There it is.
Okay, I'm going to let your screen in and then get out.
Okay.
Your screen is in.
All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes, it's in. You can see.
Okay. All right. Well, I started out my career as a mechanical engineer doing industrial sales. And I wanted to work in an industry that had broader impact. And so gradually I found my way over to healthcare, working for a company called Medtronic. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. So the division that I work in is in the lung health and visualization division. But Medtronic, in truth, is a very broad medical device company. It's the largest medical device company in the world. And it develops therapies to treat ailments all over the human body. Okay. So the company has 85,000 employs over 7,500 scientists and engineers. Last year alone, the company serviced over 53,000 patients. And in the company's history, we've improved over 62 million lives. Okay, so the company has a very broad impact, and it's said that every 2 seconds, a patient is serviced by a Medtronic medical device. Okay, so as I go through this presentation, I want to challenge all of the students on the call to think about the varying STEM disciplines that played a role in the technology, as well as the role that I play every day that I'm going to speak more specifically on. Okay, so the company's mission, in a nutshell, if you were to condense it down into a simple phrase, that phrase is simply to alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life. Think about that for a second. Meditate on that. Alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life. Okay, I mentioned I wanted to work in an industry that had broad impact, okay, meaningful impact to patients. Okay, can you imagine, being in a place where you're under debilitating pain and, healthcare just doesn't have an answer, okay? A lot of times the solution to that pain is going to come from industry, companies like Medtronic, okay? This mission inspires us, defines us, and guides us. So lung cancer, the business that I work specifically in, it's called Lung Health and Visualization. I was surprised to learn that lung cancer is the number one cancer-related death in the world. Now think about that. We always hear about breast cancer, we hear about colon cancer, prostate, pancreatic cancer. Well, if you combine all of those, the mortality for all of those various cancers and compare it against lung cancer is going to have a higher mortality around the world. Okay, and so now think about that. If you can impact that number, think about all the lives that you can impact. Okay, roughly 1 in 5 people that are going to pass away due to cancer is going to be lung cancer. Okay, this year, roughly 1.8 million people will be diagnosed with lung cancer. Okay, every 20 seconds, someone is going to pass away from lung cancer. And if you are diagnosed with lung cancer, your survival rate is only 17% out to 5 years. Okay, so when I look at that, and I say this is wholly unacceptable because I know what medical technology can do. Number one, okay, and I also know that working in the capacity, and I'll talk about that in a minute, in the capacity that I work in, I have the ability to help hospitals do a much better job in terms of streamlining their care continuum so that we can improve those numbers. Okay. So what do I mean when I say care continuum? Okay, right now, if a family member, someone you know, is diagnosed with lung cancer and they walk into the average hospital, they're going to interface with primary care, lung cancer screening, medical oncology, radiology, pathology, thoracic surgery, pulmonary medicine, and it's going to be disjointed. So they're going to get sent all over the hospital, back and forth, trying to find out what is the nature of my cancer and what do I do about it, okay? And what I do every day, working as not just a sales rep, but also as a consultant, is to help hospitals understand that they can develop a more unified lung health program, okay? Something where all of these varying departments, they talk to each other, they meet, they meet through a process called tumor boards, where they discuss each patient and then streamline that care so they know exactly where to send the patients so that they can get to the resolution of whatever the patient ailment is as quickly as possible. Okay. So look on the left, the lighter blue box on the left is a little disjointed. The patient comes in and they're going back and forth, and finally they get to where they need to get to, and that process may take 5 months. Okay. Meanwhile, you could have a cancer growing in your lung, and in 5 months, that cancer is going to progress. Okay. Whereas on the right, you can see something that's a little bit more streamlined, where the patient comes in, the varying departments, they talk to one another. That care is streamlined, and within 3 weeks, the patient has a resolution for what we're going to do to approach their, whatever the nature is of their cancer. Okay. So now I put this slide here because I wanted you all to see what the lung looks like, and for all of you all on the call who are interested in becoming doctors, I will say it is a very noble profession. One of the things you're going to learn, obviously, is patient anatomy. Okay, now here is a model of a lung. If you think about the lung, think about, like, right now the trees are losing their leaves, and so you can see the branches. Well, in your lung, there's a main branch. Okay, it's like an upside down tree almost. Okay, and it branches off into two segments. And then as those airways branch off into the lungs, it looks just like how the branches branch out into the tree. Okay. And in that purple box there, you can see that orange dot. That is the cancer that has been identified in your lung. Okay. And so the question is how what's the safest way, the most efficient way to be able to biopsy a piece of that cancer so that the oncologist can see exactly what it is. Okay, because there's different cancers. Okay, but first we have to identify what is the nature of that cancer so that it can be treated appropriately. Okay, and this is where our technology comes in. I have a short video here that I want to show part of the technology package that I sell to hospitals, and this is where they will navigate out to the lungs and do the biopsy. The procedure is called electromagnetic bronchoscopy. Okay, and the video is much more descriptive than I could ever be. So let me just play this video. So here you have a planning software that takes the CT image of the lung, and using software, it allows the doctor to plan a pathway through the airways of the lungs, those branches branching out, and then it uses GPS technology to plot a course through those airways out to wherever the cancer is. And so the patient is brought in for an outpatient procedure. They're set up. There's probes that are positioned on the patient, and then there's a registration process that basically marries the CT to the patient as they lie on the table. Okay, that registration is confirmed, and then using a flexible catheter, the doctors will navigate through that GPS courseway. You can see the purple sort of shaded region. They're going to navigate through that region of the lung, and the green ball there represents the cancer. Okay, and you can see it up close here. That's the other mass. This is the catheter, which is like a straw. Once they position it in place, they'll use specialized tools to biopsy the cancer. And then pathology or oncology will take a look at that and decide what they'll identify the nature of the cancer. And then the patient will then be triaged to the next step in their care. And so essentially this is what I sell, this product. And I spend a lot of my time in these cases, making sure that the equipment is used appropriately, answering questions. I do a lot of training of doctors who are new to this procedure. And sometimes there's just difficult cases. There may be a doctor out there who may do 50 of these a year. Well, I might see 10 of these a week. So just in terms of the knowledge that I have is going to be much more just in terms of working with the equipment and doing this procedure. And so doctors like to have me in the room just to make sure that the case goes well and that they ultimately get an answer. So just backing up a little bit, at a high level, we navigate out to the target. will biopsy the cancer, and then in specialized cases, we can do what's called dye marking as well as fiducial placement, and those two localized treatment options allow a thoracic surgeon to then come in and do the next step of the care. Okay. So now, why is this important? Okay, this sounds great. Why is it important? Well, lung cancer shows up in either 4 stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Okay, stage 1 and stage 2, the survivalship is really high. Okay, because the surgeon, the thoracic surgeon, might be able to remove that cancer. Okay, but once you get to stage 3 and stage 4, the cancer has now moved out of the lung and is now going into other areas of the body. Okay, and it's much, much more difficult to treat, and it's much, much more expensive to treat. Okay, and so for accounts that we work with, and here is just a case study here for a small community hospital, St. Thomas Health, where, working with us, they managed to flip those statistics, where now they're identifying 85% of their patients at stage 1 and stage 2, and only 15% at stage 3 versus stage 4. Okay, and if you look at that in terms of dollars and cents for the hospital, they managed to increase their revenue over $1 million. Okay, because they were not treating the majority of those patients stage 3 and stage 4, that lowered their cost. Okay, and then from a market share perspective, when hospitals deliver great care, they market that. Okay, and then patients tend to take notice, and when they have issues, they come to those hospitals. Okay, and so I always say, as when you think about E equals MC squared equals dollar signs. Okay, what does the dollar sign mean? Increasing revenue, lowering cost, and expanding market share. Okay, and essentially, this is what I do every day. Working with hospitals to develop their lung care program. So that they can improve efficiencies and deliver greater care. And so, just as a question that I want to put out there, and it's rhetorical, but think about all of the STEM majors that play a role in sort of what I do every day. Okay, so me specifically as an engineer, right, being able to understand the technology, right, being able to work with the doctors and speak in that sort of tech language, that was very easy for me to pick up because of my background. Okay, but for the system, okay, the system where you saw the navigation system, well, a computer scientist designed that system. Okay, the catheter that is used, your biomedical engineers design that system. Okay, the process uses an electromagnetic field. So now you're talking about electrical engineers that were part of the overall design team. So there's many areas where STEM majors touch this business in order for us to bring this technology to market and be able to positively impact so many patients. And so with that, I'd say thank you, and I'd certainly like to answer any questions that you may have.
Wow, that was really awesome. So you have one question for you, which is if youth are interested in studying medical technology, what can they do now in order to best prepare themselves to follow this pathway?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I will say is, think about your math, your science courses, your physics courses. Just do really well in those courses. Okay, I mean, in actuality, you need to do well across the board. Okay. What you will find is that the healthcare industry, specifically the medical device industry, it is highly competitive. Okay, and so even though you have the grades and you have the capability to get in, the managers, they can be very selective in terms of who they choose. And so as you progress throughout your educational career, think about what it's going to take to be competitive in some of these industries. And I would be remiss without saying they pay us very well to do this kind of work. Okay. And so if you really want to make a good living, this is a good industry, but it's competitive. And so you need to have the grades.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Bernard. Definitely hope that you have interested some kids in this STEM area, and we will head to our next session.
Thank you.
That was a great presentation about a great field that is interdisciplinary, and no matter what your interest is in STEM, you could probably find a place in that. So I am going to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Kimberly Jacoby. I'm sorry, I probably am messing it up because I'm struggle Saturday mornings. That is with the Air Force Research Lab. Please forgive me. I don't drink coffee.
You are totally fine. Thank you so much for organizing this event and for inviting me to be a part of it. I've already enjoyed the speakers that have shared with us this morning, and I'm sure our young people have taken away great pieces of information. So thank you, Ms. Smith.
Okay. And you're not sharing your screen, correct? We're just going to see you because it looks like you're in your lab.
So welcome to my kitchen. So today we're going to do a little experiment together to show the changes in pressure, air pressure specifically, and then talk a little bit about why those concepts are important to the Air Force Research Laboratory and some opportunities that exist there. I just want to take a moment before I get started to thank all of the parents, guardians, caregivers out there who are online with us this morning supporting our young people. Your support is just critical, and thank you for investing your time. So today you can do this at home. You just need an empty can, soda can, juice can, clean it out and empty it. And then just a little bit of water, maybe 2 tablespoons of water. I'm going to go ahead and pour that inside the empty can now. Okay. And then put this on my electric burner so it can heat up. We want that to boil and to have the space in the can filled with water vapor. So we know that here on Earth, obviously we have a particular atmospheric pressure, right? We talk about different levels of sea level pressure. And then if you think about it, we're not crushed, right? When we're walking around, we can exist with all of this external pressure coming down on us. Why is that? We actually have internal pressure inside ourselves that push back out. So I am going to show you an experiment today where we manipulate that by cooling the temperature very quickly to make the water vapor condense. And that change in pressure is going to crush our can. And all we're using is water and temperature as manipulative variables. So we're just going to wait a second here while my can is boiling. In this particular container, I just have some cool water. I have a couple of ice cubes in there to make sure it's quite cold. And then I have my tongs so I don't burn my fingers when I go to grab my very warm soda can with the water vapor. So we're just about there. I'm starting to see some steam come out of the top of our can, letting it just go a little bit longer to make sure all of that space is filled with water vapor. Now I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about the Air Force Research Laboratory. So the Air Force Research Laboratory is an amazing organization that has a bunch of different sites that study different areas of science related to the mission of our Department of Air Force and our United States Space Force. Does anyone know what those two different organizations do in the tri-service or military structure? You can type in the chat and I will try to keep an eye on it. While you're typing, I hear that my can is boiling. You can actually see on the screen the vapor coming out the top. So I'm going to very carefully take this off with my tongs, and we've successfully crushed our can by changing the pressure. So let's see. All this water coming out, but it's completely crushed from that change. Rapid change in temperature. So all your water vapor, which takes up more space, pushes out pressure. We created a partial vacuum, which crushed our can almost instantaneously when it touches that cool water. So if that's a quick experiment you can do at home. Something similar to show the same sort of phenomena, you can take a container, light a piece of paper, put it inside the container, and it will actually suck in a hard-boiled egg inside your vessel. But just some fun things that we can do at home and make sure that we're still getting those hands-on experiences and playing and learning at the same time. The first time you do the experiment, it might not work, but we always learn from our mistakes. And that's one of my favorite parts of science, right? It doesn't have to be perfect every time. The mistakes are important learning opportunities. So as I was mentioning before, the Air Force Research Laboratory has a bunch of different areas that we are investigating. We look at different materials and material science, different sources for energy. We're interested in human performance. So if we're sending airmen into space or in different environments, we want to make sure that they're healthy and perform to the best of their ability. We also are thinking about the actual environment in outer space, right? So we are thinking about different payloads and how we can make sure these materials are resistant to damage, radiation, all of these extreme changes that happen in outer space. So I wanted to also point out something that I learned when I joined the Air Force Research Laboratory structure at the Air Force Office of Scientific Research, that you do not have to be an enlisted member of the military or an officer. So you do not have to be active duty to participate in the research laboratory opportunities. You can be a civilian. You can join as a postdoc, a scientific researcher, and participate in all types of interesting work that's really quite cutting edge. So I'm just going to pause here for a moment and check the chat. I see that we have a little bit of activity here. Wonderful. Thanks everyone so much for joining this morning. I appreciate it. So if there are no questions about the Air Force Research Laboratory, I'm going to take just 2 minutes and talk about kind of my own trajectory and how I got to be where I am doing can crushing experiments in my kitchen on a Saturday morning. So I decided to major in chemistry when I was in undergrad. Chemistry was one of the courses that I really liked in high school. I liked, balancing equations. The math was challenging, but I felt like I could take on the challenge and just try it. And then after my undergrad, I decided to do a PhD also in chemistry. So when I was doing my PhD, I was looking at DNA repair mechanisms. So if we have DNA in extreme environments like Mars, where it's really, really hot and also really, really cold, and we have extreme UV irradiation damaging DNA and life as we know it, how can we fix those damaged sites in DNA if it's temperature dependent, right? So you have this huge range of temperature. How is that possible? So we were looking at that when I was in graduate school. And then I taught for a little bit, and then I did a postdoctoral research at the National Institutes of Health. You might be familiar with the National Institutes of Health because they've been all over the news with the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's just been really exciting to be a part of that institution. I used to work as an education specialist there, and then now I'm with the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. So I think you can see that my career has been a little bit meandering, and I just want to give you some confidence that you don't need to have everything figured out today. You'll definitely obtain more information as you go, and you can change your mind in different areas that you'd like to major in or pursue different opportunities. But there are so many options in STEM. And so I encourage you to just explore and try different things and figure out what is the best fit for each of you. So with that, thank you so much for spending time with me this morning, and I hope you enjoyed our little experiment together. And I'm happy to take any questions.
So we did have 2 questions as far as if anyone wanted to contact you, what would be the best way to do that?
So I can put my work email in the chat. I am always up for outreach at schools, and I'd be happy to share internship opportunities, summer camp opportunities that we have. Our summer camps are free. They're here in Arlington, which is right outside the district. So
did I hear free summer camps? And see, that's why I went ahead and asked, about contact info, because I think you and the work that you do with the Air Force Research Laboratory is such a great resource for youth. I mean, if they can get connected, get involved, I know phenomenal things can happen with that. The other question that we had was, would the can experiment be similar if an airplane went very high in the sky with no pressure?
With no pressure. So that is sort of related to our research in, how can I say? You need to take into account hypersonics, kind of like the travel speed at which you're going through different layers of the atmosphere, right? And you are compensating for changes in pressure, right? We have to use different materials. And so the can experiment is kind of a simplified version of that, but these are also things we have to think about as planes go high in the sky in different atmospheric layers where the pressure does change. We always say that space is a vacuum. It's not a total vacuum. It's a partial vacuum. So I love this question. I think that the answer is a little bit convoluted, and I hope you can take something away from what I've shared.
Wow, yeah, it definitely sounds like a very interesting work that you guys are working on. So definitely hope, like I said, youth get connected and involved. Thank you, Dr. Jacoby.
Thanks so much for inviting me. Take care, everyone.
Alrighty, and with that, we will be heading for our first breakout session.
It's on you, Carlin.
It's a break session, but it is break time, because we know that when we are doing things virtually, it's kind of good to get up, get moving, give our brains a little break from all of the new information that we're taking in. And so for you guys, I have a game that we're going to play, and it is where I will take a STEM word, and the STEM word is going to have the vowels in it replaced with two E's. And your goal is to guess what the stem word actually is, and what the correct vowels in it are. So, so that you can get a good gauge of how this works, we're going to start off with some easy words. So, when you walk outside, you will see eek when you walk around. I can tell you that it is a type of tree. Do we have any guesses for what the correct word for eek is? And again, the actual vowels of the word have been replaced with two E's. So eek is, you can put your guesses in the chat. Will we have someone who wants to take a stab at it? Okay, so I'll just go ahead and share that the word is oak. And I think that this is a wonderful time of the year for you to go outside, observe different trees like oak trees, especially as the leaves are also changing. So oak was our first word. Our next word is going to be meat. And this one's kind of, if you listen, this one's kind of easy. What could the actual word for meat be? If you're in STEM, and especially if you're in earth science or environmental science, which we will hear about today, you definitely hear this word all the time. Sometimes you'll hear about news related to clean meat. So if you have any guesses for what the actual word is and what the correct vowels are, you can share them in the chat. Yes, the word is climate. So for our next one, if you are interested in STEM, you're going to need, if you're interested in a STEM career, you're going to need training. Can you guess what that word is? Training. And hopefully with the demos and presentations you hear today, then you can think about the steps that you need to take in order to pursue your dream STEM career. And with any career that you pursue, you're going to need training. So that was the word. All right. So our next word is you're gonna hear about this one in one of our presentations about the ocean. The word is steward. Steward. Can you guess what the actual word is with the correct vowels? You guys can let me know if this one is harder, but I will go ahead and let you know that the word is steward. Okay, so Our next word is going to be speak, trim. Of course, with this being a STEM career fair, all of these words are STEM related. And with this particular word, I think about the colors that we have. They exist on a spectrum. How said it? Spectrum. Can you guess what the actual word is? Okay, so I will go ahead. Oh, okay, someone got it. It's spectrum. The colors exist on a color spectrum. All right, so I have another word for you guys, and it is fecal. A paleontologist looks at fecals. What is the actual word? Yep, the word is fossils. Awesome.
So, Carlin, thank you so much for that fun game. I am always like, your games are so hard to me, but it seems like people were really getting them and they are very creative. So, thank you for giving us that break to think on a Saturday morning to make these connections between STEM and one quick question before I introduce our next speaker. How did you come up with this game, or where did you find it? And like, what is the point of the game? Like, what is it supposed to teach you other than be like, man, okay.
Yes, so
And they said it was fun. So thank you, Kelly.
I can't claim all of the glory. I did find this game online. I did make the change in including all STEM words since, like I already mentioned, this is the STEM career fair. So hopefully with these different words, they did highlight some of the topics that we'll hear about today, like earth and environmental science and, ocean stewardship. So they're just words to get our brains thinking about all these different areas of STEM.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Colin. That was a great game, and we are looking forward to your next game. And so, our next speaker, which we're going to let in shortly, is Miss Debbie Gordon. Debbie Gordon is a hydrologist with the USGS. She is going to tell you what that is. I always mispronounce the acronyms or never know really what they stand for with these very government agencies. But telling you that she is a hydrologist, you can tell that she studies water, is an earth scientist, or environmental scientist, or maybe a combination, a geoscientist. So I am, oh, I'm sorry, Jay. So we are just going to allow Miss Gordon to come in. Okay. All right. And thank you, Carlin, for that great game. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for that great introduction. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. And once you're ready to share your screen, I'll come out and let you for
Okay,
your presentation.
great.
Excuse me.
Before I do that, I just want to say a few things.
Okay.
Like Ms. Smith said, I'm a hydrologist with the U.S. Geological Survey, and that is part of the government, the Department of Interior. And my background is in geology. And so I've always loved to get outside and explore what's out there in nature. I mean, there's so many amazing things in our environment. And Carlin had a great introduction for me because, like she said, it's a great time of year to get out and look at the trees and look at the environment. And she also mentioned fossils. And it just so happens that this morning I was taking a walk, and right now I'm in Texas visiting my dad. I live in Georgia, but in Texas, in San Antonio, where I am, there's a lot of limestone, and limestone is formed in a shallow sea. So there's not a shallow sea in San Antonio right now, but the rocks that are here were formed many, many, many years ago in a shallow sea. And there's a lot of limestone. Limestone, because it was in a shallow sea, has a lot of shell fossils. And I took a walk this morning, and I'm going to try to show you the fossil that I found this morning. See that shell in this piece of limestone? So I still think that's really cool. I love going outside, seeing what I can find, looking at all the rocks, and uncovering amazing things. So when you're out and about, look around and see what you can find. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do. And to do that, I'm going to show a couple of videos. So I'm going to share my screen and show two pretty short videos and a website.
Your screen is up and you're ready to go.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Megan Poff, and I'm the data chief at the USGS in Nevada. I started off my career with the USGS as a hydrologic technician. And when I took that job, I didn't know what a hydrologic technician did. So as I found out through the years, hydrologic technicians do a variety of work. It's field work, it's office work, pretty much anything you can think of in support of collecting USGS water data is what our hydrologic technicians do. So a few of my colleagues are going to introduce what they are doing in the field.
Hey folks, my name is Adam O'Brisick. I'm with the United States Geological Survey here in Washington State. I'm on the beautiful Puyallup River measuring stream flow. I'm using an acoustic Doppler current profiler today. This uses sound pings in order to measure water velocity and water depth. This particular station is important for flood warning. The National Weather Service uses this data in order to issue flood forecasts and flood warnings when necessary.
My name is Bryce Redinger. I'm a hydrologic technician with the U.S. Geological Survey, and here I am off-roading to get to one of my gauges. Four-wheel drive trucks are a lifesaver out here. Here's another shot of me. I'm cleaning out my measurement cross-section at one of my stations. These plants block our stream flow measurement meters, so making some obstruction-free water to measure in.
I wish I could describe the smell here. It's quite spectacular. Let's say it smells very organic. But yeah, we have a cross section, so we're gonna let that clear. I'll walk you up to the gauge house. equipment. We had a bunch of visitors earlier. I nuked them, so don't worry. We're going to be fine. Yeah. Yo, once that clears out, go and make a measurement.
My name's Allison. I'm a hydrologic technician with the U.S. Geological Survey, Washington Water Science Center in Tacoma, Washington. And today I am at Rock Creek near Maple Valley, Washington, and I am calibrating this precipitation gauge. And what's happening right now is I've got my calibration bottle inside of this funnel here, and it's filled with a known amount of liquid. And there's a small nozzle at the end of the bottle, which slowly lets water drip down into the gauge. And we call this a dual tipping bucket rain gauge, meaning that there are two small buckets inside of this apparatus. And as one bucket fills up completely, it tips down and empties its contents, and the other bucket rises up and starts filling with water. And so each tip equates to a known amount of rainfall, or in this case, just tap water. I have right here a digital counter that I've hooked up that will count every tip for me, so I don't have to do it manually. Each test, which I do about 3 times, takes about 30 minutes to complete, so I will be here for a while. But that is essentially it. That is a rain gauge, and this is just one of the small things that we do in the USGS to further improve and communicate science and data to the public.
Hello, my name is Steven Sissel. I work for the United States Geological Survey. I'm here in the beautiful, albeit rainy, Pacific Northwest and in Whatcom Creek. Today, I am charged with getting a velocity, a width, and a depth of this stream. With those 3 parameters, we can telemetry that data via the web from this gauge house. These gauge houses are all over the country. They're on mountainsides, they're on the bridges, they're everywhere, farms. It's very vital that we share this resource with all. Just like this rain is free, this river is free, so is our data. It's the only natural resource that is necessary for every biological process here on the planet Earth.
Greetings, Earthlings. It's Russell Sherman with USGS, Washington Water Science Center. I'm here today at the Cowlitz River at Castle Rock Stream Gauge, meeting with scientists and technicians from the Oregon Water Science Center and Cascades Volcano Observatory to do a recon for new equipment install. We're looking at putting in an acoustic velocity profile meter and a turbidity sensor, and figure out where it's all going to go. Here's what the site looks like. The stilling well behind me is an old one built in the 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps. It's been abandoned since the Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980. Current stream gauge is on the opposite side of the river, and we're trying to decide whether we're going to try to rehab this old one or install something new.
Okay, now I'm going to share a video of people working throughout the Department of Interior.
We are passionate,
dedicated,
and resilient.
We protect America's past, present, and future. We are the Department of the Interior. Being a part of a community, part of Jemez, I felt like I needed to give to my community, and I love what I do.
By being in service to Yosemite, I'm in service to the United States, but I'm also, because it's a World Heritage Site, I'm in service to the world. And I think by giving, you receive far more in return.
I actually went to school online working on my master's, so I worked full time and went to school full time. A manager at the time was like, I see a drive in you, and it's whatever you want to do.
I hired in out of college, and I took a chance, took the job, and I'm still here 20 years later. So it's worth the risk. Don't let any opportunity pass you by.
I wake up wondering, like, what is my first email going to be, and what am I going to have to figure out in order to solve that problem? There's always going to be a problem that shows up, and that's exciting to me. I love problem solving.
My work challenges me all of the time. I am learning new skills. Right now I'm doing computer modeling, which is something I never thought I would have ventured into, but it is so much fun.
People understand that our jobs are tough. We have a lot to do, and we work hard when we do it. So there's an appreciation of times to recharge and relax, and we've got a great spot to do it.
What's the best part of your job?
All of it. I honestly love working for this park and for the Park Service so much. Like, I seriously can't think of like anything else that I want to do.
I really love my work and I love my job. To me, that's a big factor if you have to wake up every single day and enjoy the job that you have to go and do. And I really like the work.
I think everybody in the HR office would agree that one of the most fun things is offering jobs to people because they get so excited.
That's what gets me out of bed every day. It's really thinking about who will make a difference, who can contribute to the work that I'm doing, and how do we work or build something together and move it forward.
I never thought that working for the government would be such an adventure, would be so enjoyable, that I would almost do it for free.
Okay, and I want to show you one last thing. Because something else that we do at the USGS is monitor seismic activity. And seismic activity, for example, is earthquakes. And so we have an interactive map, and I shared the link for this and the videos in the chat. Hopefully Carlin has shared those. So if you get on our USGS earthquakes website, you can choose to view anywhere in the world. Also, the length of time, like how many earthquakes have there been today or this week. But I chose to show how many earthquakes of magnitude 2.5 or greater have there been in the U.S. in the last 30 days. And I did this to show you that there's a lot of earthquakes all across the United States. You know, we always hear about earthquakes in California in the West Coast, but these are ones in the East Coast. And the white represents ones that have been greater than a week ago. So let's click on this one here, and we'll see that there was an earthquake in Lafayette, Virginia, or Lafayette, I'm not sure how they pronounce it there, on September 27th. It was a magnitude 3.3, if I recall. So I know that's where a lot of you guys are in Virginia and Maryland and DC. So maybe you felt this earthquake. I don't know. There was also one recently in North Carolina and in South Carolina. So I was just surprised, even though, you know, I'm a geologist, I was surprised to see how many earthquakes there are all the time, and that sometimes they're close to us. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and try to answer any questions.
My screens like don't come up at the same time, so hopefully I wasn't up for too long. So wow, that was really amazing to hear about how much the people that work for USGS love their job. And honestly, I'm an outdoors person, so I would probably love it too. But I wanted to ask for youth who are curious, who are more curious about if working in hydrology or any other earth or environmental science career is right for them. What are some ways that they can tell?
Well, if they are curious about our environment and like you and me love to be outside and explore, enjoy science, that kind of thing, I think they would really enjoy it.
Awesome. Another question that I had was about, so with so many roles at USGS, what is it like as far as if someone is interested in one particular area and then maybe they discover that they want to explore a different type of job related to the same type of work that USGS does? What are the different types of roles that people can look forward to being involved in, and the opportunity to kind of switch it up if the desire is there?
Well, that's one of the things I like most about working with USGS is the variability in what I get to do and what different people do in the organization. You saw in the videos a lot of people doing field work, like in streams, collecting data, and that's a fun part of the job. But once the data are collected, you can take it back to the office and analyze the data. And so we try to analyze all of our data, put it up on our website so it's available for the public to use. And also we write reports so that people can learn about the environment. But there's so many different things. Like there was one photo or part of the video that showed a drone, and we're getting more and more into collecting data that we were not able to collect before using drones, because they can get to places that we just can't. For example, there's volcanoes erupting in Hawaii right now, and collecting like the chemicals that are coming out of the volcano. I mean, that's really too hazardous for people to do, to get that close. So they've been sending drones up there to collect the temperature and some of the steam from the steam vents. And it can tell us so much more than what we used to be able to collect. So that's one example. And, we need people that are really good with computers and really good with chemistry, as also biology and geology, like so many different parts of sciences.
Awesome. And so I guess my last question is, I think there might be, in my opinion, a misconception that you don't work with technology when we're talking about earth science or environmental science careers. But evidently, from what you're sharing, there is a lot of use of technology in this particular STEM pathway. So if you could just speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, all the data that we collect, we use a lot of technology. There's a lot of instruments that we use to collect the data, but then all of it needs to be processed using computers and be put into a format that people can use and study and analyze. So we do use a lot of different types of technology.
Awesome. And I have just one more question. So the rock that you said that you found for youth, would you recommend if they are out exploring and they find cool rocks, is it okay for them to pick it up? How would they know that, you know, it's okay to pick up these rocks that are outside?
So typically when you're just out walking around, it's fine to pick up rocks. If you're in a park, like a state park or a national park, you're supposed to leave everything where it is so that everyone can enjoy it. But, you know, I was just out in my dad's backyard. So yeah, I felt like it was okay. And, you know, you got to be careful of your surroundings when you're out, like for snakes and spiders and things like that. If you pick something up, a lot of times there's some things like to live under there. So just pay attention and look at what you're doing. But yeah, I like to pick up a lot of rocks. I have a lot of rocks at my house.
Awesome. I'm so glad we got that answered because for me, I do not want to see any creepy crawlies. But I can appreciate the trees and the rocks that we talked about. Well, thank you so much, Debbie. We appreciate you sharing with us the awesome work that you guys are doing at USGS. And with that, we will be heading into our next session.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Carlin, for that great Q&A. So our next speaker is a topic that I think is really, really cool, marine science. So we are going to be introducing Ms. Jacqueline Rosa of the Blue Latitudes Foundation.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Rosa. I am a marine scientist and I work for the Blue Latitudes Foundation. I currently live in San Diego, but I grew up on the East Coast in Connecticut. And today I'll be sharing with you my path to marine science and also talking about the research that I'm doing with underwater robots and how we're using that tool to study the oceans. So I'm going to share a presentation with you. I'll be sharing my screen.
Your screen is in.
Great. Thank you. So when I was in high school, I loved science and math. I enjoyed making observations, doing experiments in chemistry class, using math to solve problems. But I also loved writing and doing artwork and most of all being in the ocean. So when I applied for college, the field of marine science really captured all of my interests and let me combine all of them. A marine scientist's work can really be divided into three parts: teaching, fieldwork, and research. One of my favorite parts about being a marine scientist is teaching and sharing my love for the ocean with people like I'm doing today with you all. Teaching people of all ages and backgrounds about how the ocean functions, about things that live in the ocean, and about how humans impact the ocean is really important because the better we can understand this resource, the better we can work to protect it. Fieldwork is another important component of being a marine scientist. Fieldwork means getting out in the field, so on a boat, on a beach, or even scuba diving underwater to collect data on fish, waves, currents, and all sorts of things that live in the ocean. And finally, we have research. So research is a big part of a day-to-day life of a marine scientist. Carrying out research helps us learn new things about the ocean, and it's estimated that 90% of the global ocean has yet to be mapped, and there's still a lot of species we have yet to discover, so it's an exciting field to be in. But research can be difficult under the sea because humans can only go so far. So how do we study the ocean when we can't go scuba diving? One tool we can use is called a remotely operated vehicle, also called an underwater robot. And today I'll be referring to remotely operated vehicles with ROVs. So here are some examples on the left-hand side. Imagine driving a remote control car, but under the water. ROVs come in all different shapes and sizes, and they have a few common components. Often there's a camera at the front, so we can take photos and videos of marine life that we see. Strong lights, so they can illuminate what we're looking at. As you dive deeper in the ocean, it gets darker, so those lights really come in handy. Some ROVs have lasers on the front that we can use to measure the size of organisms that we're seeing, such as fish. And there are also some grabber arms on the front that we can collect samples of animals and sand. Now, I want to introduce you to the ROV that I'm using in my work with Blue Latitudes. It looks a little bit different. This is the Deep Trekker remotely operated vehicle. It can dive to about 600 feet deep, and I'm going to walk you through some of those components. So we have a camera right there on the front that can rotate up and down. We have strong lights on the front to help us see what we're looking at. You can see on the right-hand side, we have a photo of the Deep Trekker ROV in the water. There's a grabber arm on the front as well to help us pick up anything. And this is the controller. Now, if you play video games, you would be very good at driving this ROV. Similar to a controller, to a video game controller, this controller has two joysticks. So we can drive the ROV, up, down, forwards, backwards, left and right, and dive to explore different habitats. The robot and the controller are connected by a tether, also called a communication cable. For the Deep Trekker, the tether is bright yellow and it's about 300 feet long. So that gives us plenty of room to dive and explore. Now, I'm sure you're all dying to see, let me back up. Okay, so the organization that I work for is using the ROV to explore natural and artificial reefs. A natural reef is something like a coral reef or a rocky area or an area with a sandy bottom. An artificial reef is a man-made structure that provides habitat for animals, like this pier right here. A few weeks ago, I drove the ROV underneath this pier, and on the left, this is the view from the camera of the robot. So we're looking at one of the pilings on the pier, and this view shows us the temperature. It was 63 degrees Fahrenheit that day in the water. It shows us the depth. We were 1.1 feet deep, and it also shows us the compass heading. So it tells us if we're driving the ROV north, east, south, or west, which helps us to navigate and not lose the robot underwater. That day underneath the pier, I saw mussels, barnacles, and a lot of algae, also called seaweed, that were growing. So I can't bring all of you to the beach with me, but I want to show you a short video about the ROV in action. So you'll see here in the video that day we decided to paddle out on kayaks and launch the ROV in the water. Operating it is a two-person job. So one person is driving the ROV while the other person makes sure that the tether doesn't get tangled. The area where we explored that day was a marine protected area, which means that you can't fish or collect any animals. And this really allows marine life to thrive without human pressure. We saw a lot of fish that day, including that orange fish, which is called the Garibaldi. It's the California state fish. There's a lot of algae there, providing habitat for little animals. At the end of our expedition, we hauled the ROV back into our kayak and we paddled back to shore. So this is a great example of doing field work. We were out there in the field doing some research. So here's another video taken by an ROV, but a little bit deeper in the ocean. We see a species of fish called amberjacks swimming around an artificial reef in the Gulf of Mexico. So amberjacks, like tuna, are a larger fish, and they're a pelagic species, which means that they swim further offshore. They like to swim in the open ocean. Sometimes they come inshore to feed on smaller fish. If you look closely in this video, you can see two green parallel lines in the center of the screen, and those are the lasers that I was talking about. So these lasers help us measure fish length. If a fish swims in between those lasers, we can take a screenshot, kind of like you take on your iPhone, and we then can use math, use a ratio to determine the size of the fish. And this can give us a clue about how many adult fish are living in an area or how many juvenile fish are living in an area. Now, while you may live far from the ocean or visit the beach infrequently, there are a lot of ways that you can protect the ocean from home. The first one is, focusing on the things that you are buying and using in your everyday life. Most importantly, reducing your use of single-use plastics, buying only what you need. I often shop at thrift stores to get things used or borrow things from friends that I might only need a few times. There are awesome ways that you can participate in marine science, even if you're not a marine scientist. And these are projects called citizen science projects, or I like to call them community science projects. The first one I want to introduce you to is the Marine Debris Tracker app. So the next time you visit a beach, you can download this app. It's free. It's run by National Geographic. And you can pick up trash on the beach if it's safe to do so, and then record what you saw. So maybe you saw 3 straws and 2 plastic bottles. When you enter that data into this app, scientists all around the world are using this data to enforce policy change, like banning plastic straws, for example. So it's a really small way that you can help out with an actual science project. If you're a sushi fan like I am, the Seafood Watch app is a great way for you to figure out what the most sustainable fish choice is in your area. This is a great tool for when you or someone in your family is going to the store and buying seafood. It can help you out. Unfortunately, the ocean is downhill of everything. Even if a piece of trash gets loose 100 miles from the ocean, it might end up at the beach. So doing cleanups at your local park, along your street, if you live in a city, again, if it's safe to do so, at a river, at a lake, all of those can have big impacts on the ocean. And finally, stay informed. So there are incredible documentaries out there. Here are just 2 examples. Mission Blue on Netflix, Disney's Oceans are great ways that you can learn more about whales, sharks, deep sea habitats, and all sorts of things. So I'm going to end with some steps that you can follow to become a marine scientist if this is something that you're interested in. First off, continue to work hard in school, reach out to people in your community, your teachers, if you're needing help in a class. As you get older, look into research, internships, or volunteer opportunities. These are the best ways to get skills and experience, for the workforce later on. Attend college, get dive certified if you can. I was able to get my scuba diving certification in college, which opened up a lot of doors for me as far as doing research underwater. And finally, continue to share your love for science in the ocean. Go back to your community, your family, your friends, and tell them about what you learned today. Spread the word about how we all need to do our part to protect our oceans. And with that, I'm all done. So please let me know if you have any questions.
All right, very cool. I think it's always great when we are able to talk about those areas of the world, really, that, just as you said, are hard to get to if you're not using technology. I feel like technology is like such a buzzword, but if you're not using technology, if we're not using multimedia resources like those awesome images, or videos like in the documentaries, I think it's so important that we just have the opportunity to show youth, like, this is what you can study and do research in. So with that being said, you provided so many resources for youth. My question for you is, what drives your inspiration and passion for this STEM area?
I think my personal love for the ocean and being in the water is what drives my work. I really love to snorkel, body surf, scuba dive, and those are all hobbies that are made possible by having a clean ocean that's safe. And so the work that I do, even though it's kind of a small part of it, it definitely can have a big impact. And an ROV is a great tool to explore areas where we can't. And it's something that's really exciting, that was really new to me, to use technology to explore. But I'm excited. It has a lot of potential.
All right. So this other question that we have, I'm not totally sure we'll have a good answer for it, but the question is, where do we look for internships in Georgia? So we actually do a lot of our work in the DMV and in Atlanta, Georgia. And I know you mentioned, the East Coast. Do you know of any resources for youth that are not on the West Coast and that they can look into?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm definitely more familiar with the New England area because that's where I grew up and I went to school at the University of Maine. But I think, looking for internships with universities and aquariums, I'm sure there's some nature centers, maybe like that, nature centers and marshlands or forests that would provide internships or volunteer opportunities, especially if you're in high school. You often need volunteer hours to graduate, or maybe it's part of a class, and you can start getting that experience when you're in high school, which is great.
That is a great answer. Definitely look locally at your universities and STEM institutions, science institutions, because a lot of places have STEM outreach for youth. We want youth to be involved. So another question that I have is, as far as, so in the last session, we talked about, if you're out in nature and you see rocks, like, should you touch them, interact with them? What about with animals or maybe fish species? What would you say, Jacqueline, youth should do if they're out in nature and they see, animals? Should they leave them alone? Is it okay to get close to them? Can you answer that?
Sure. I think if you're along the shoreline and things like shells and rocks would be okay to pick up. As you get deeper in the water, though, there's a lot of animals like snails and starfish and really, baby fish that are just starting out their life that use shells as habitat. So those larger shells you could leave in the water. If you're walking along the area of the beach during a low tide, meaning that the water has moved offshore and some of that coastline is exposed, be really careful about where you're walking. The animals that live along that zone are called intertidal animals, and they're fragile, right? They're, for a part of the day when the low tide comes in, they're not covered by water, so they're really at risk of drying out, and you want to leave those animals where they are. I encourage you to flip over a rock to look to see if there's anything underneath it, but make sure you flip that rock back over so those crabs, anemones, whatever it is, can stay wet and they can continue to live. But going down to the intertidal zone is really where my love for the ocean first started. I would go catch crabs with my brothers in the summer, and we would, uncover rocks, make sure to turn them back over, and then at the end of the day, release all of those crabs in an area. So it's a great way to have a hands-on experience at the ocean, but make sure you're doing it really carefully.
Awesome. So another question that we had is that, are you familiar with any summer programs for youth or teens if they're interested in marine science?
The first one that comes to mind is out here in California. So it is a little bit further away from the East Coast. I used to work on Catalina Island, where I taught marine science, and Catalina Island is off the coast of Los Angeles. And they have summer programs that are focused on marine biology, sailing, and scuba diving. You can get your scuba diving certification if you're in high school. And there are scholarships available for this program. So the camp itself is called Catalina Sea Camp, which you can look up online. But again, look to local aquariums, local nature centers. They often have 1 or 2 week camps, or maybe even a day camp that you could attend to get exposed to marine science.
Awesome. Let me see. Finally, my last question that I want to ask is, you mentioned policy, and even I believe the last point that you made is the importance of communication, and with youth learning these different aspects of being good stewards of the ocean and the environment, how important it is for them to share with their peers and their family members. So could you talk a little bit about maybe STEM careers that, also involve skills in communications, and whether we're talking about writing in reference to policy?
Sure. So some of the careers in like the marine science realm that deal with communication would be teaching. I taught marine science for a number of years. And that was really fun. I worked with students from 2nd grade all the way up through 12th grade. So if you're someone that has an interest in science, but also is maybe thinking about being a teacher, you could teach marine science at a summer camp or at a year-round program. I'm sure a lot of students are also really great with social media, making Instagram videos and TikTok videos. And that is something, that has become huge in the science communication realm, because we are wanting to get science out to the general public. And a part of my job working for Blue Latitudes Foundation is creating their social media content. So taking what we're learning in the field, taking the research that we have, and translating that into a way that the general public can understand. And so I find myself on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, using those platforms to spread our mission. So if that's something that students are interested and they feel really passionate about, they can combine that with science and do, science communications, marketing, things like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jacqueline, for that presentation. And with that, we'll be heading into our next session.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much for leading that great Q&A, Carlin. So our next speaker is going to do something pretty cool for you all, and another activity you can do at home. So I am going to introduce Mr. Michael Canty of AT&T, and he is going to do a cool presentation with technology and animals. Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Canty.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay.
Good. Hey, I got to get this in. I got to get this in right now so that the students can see this. Yes. Okay. Oh, here we go. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. Can you see it?
I'm about to let it in, so I was waiting till we get all of your setup, because you have a pretty cool setup.
Yeah. Hey,
so
can
your
y'all
screen
see
is
that?
in. We can see
y'all
it.
see that bird? Yes.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I was waiting. I was like, man, please have a bird show up. Please have a bird show up just in time for the demo. So this guy has been up here eating for a while. So guys, what you're looking at is, well, first of all, hey, my name is Mike Canty. I'm with AT&T. Glad to be on with you. I hope I lay out some things that you might find interested with respect to computer science, software programming. And really what I'm showing you is kind of an example of a software application. So what you're looking at is, this is my backyard. I live in Maryland. This is my backyard, and I set up a bird feeder in my backyard. and I work from home and I work like upstairs, so I'm never outside to see the birds. So I wanted to be able to set up a capability where I can, get notified whenever birds, arrive at the feeder and let me see them eat, right? That's essentially what this project is about. So it's a little windy here in Maryland, so you can see the bird is still holding on. So you guys have heard a lot of projects already about nature and marine science and some of the other, really cool careers. I'm not a birdologist, if that's the right word, but I just love watching, nature and birds. And so I'm going to walk you through. You see, man, this guy is just enjoying himself. So I wanted to at least show you that. And so what I want to now do is rewind and show you what I set up to get what you're seeing here, to get this this bird feeder. But I just wanted you to guys see, hey, this thing does work, right? So let's walk back and show you what my setup looks like. Is that okay? All right. Man, that is so cool. Okay. All right. Let me. I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to go right into my presentation. Okay. So here it is. Okay. So the name of my project, right, that you guys just kind of saw demo is just called Bird Watcher, right? And what I wanted to ask myself was, hey, how can I know when birds arrive to eat from my bird feeder? And so maybe in the chat, my question for you all would be, what would you do, right? What would you, set up? How would you, know when birds arrive to go ahead and are eating at your bird feeder? So that was the question. And so you saw the feed, you saw a bird eating. So how did I get there? And here is the technology part of this discussion. So what you're looking at, guys, are the technology that I use to set up my bird feeder. What you notice here is this device. It's called a Raspberry Pi, okay? A Raspberry Pi is a computer that accepts different inputs. So I have a USB drive, there's a Wi-Fi component, has some USB ports, okay? And the cool thing is I can attach different sensors, right? So I have this one that's called, well, obviously it's a camera, and I also have a motion sensor. And I also have some jumper wires that connect the sensors, right, to the brain of the Raspberry Pi, okay? So what do you think the purpose of the motion sensor is when you think about, trying to watch birds? Is, a question that, I wanted to ask you all. So maybe you can kind of put your answers in the chat. Why the camera? Why is that important? And third, how do you think all this works together? And lastly, will this solve my problem? I think I've already answered that question since you already saw the feed, but these are just the simple things: a Raspberry Pi, a camera, and a motion sensor, okay? So how does all this kind of come together? Well, I'm going to show you a picture of the setup, because what you saw was the feeder, but here's my setup. So here's the bird feeder, and I have that Raspberry Pi, and I just stuck it up like on a ladder. But what you see here is the camera, right? And the motion detector or motion sensor pointed towards the feeder. And hopefully you can see this. I drew like this black line. It's kind of some shading. So this motion sensor, their field of view is right here at the bottom of the bird feeder. So what happens is whenever a bird lands, on the feeder to eat, it sends a signal over to the camera for the camera to wake up and either start taking pictures or provide a live feed so that I can watch it. Okay. So that's essentially set up. Use the Raspberry Pi, connected this sensor, and I have a motion sensor to detect whenever a bird arrives at that at my feeder. Okay. Now, you've already heard some other talks right around different animal type research. They all use cameras, right? Some of them may even use motion sensors. So here's the thing, and let me just kind of bring the AT&T aspect. All these sensors and all this stuff is important because it collects data. But the important thing is it has to be able to provide connectivity back so that you can actually see, see the feed or see the cameras. And so that connectivity, in this case, is over Wi-Fi. But what if this was like up in the trees or in some remote village, right? Or some dangerous area? Well, you might not have Wi-Fi, so you might use another technology like cellular, or Bluetooth or some other connectivity. And so it's important to keep that in mind, that you're going to have some sensors, but and they're used to collect data, but then you have to have some connectivity to get that data back so that you can actually see it and process it and things like that. Okay. So just another picture. So I was going to have now kind of show you show you the demo, but since I had a bird there at that time, I was like, hey, let me just kind of get ahead. But what I will do real quick is I'm going to show you some other cool pictures. I see he's gone, right? So he's gone. So I was glad that we were able to catch him while he was there. So he ate and ran, right? So he got his fill. But check this out. These are some of the other birds that that I saw while I was kind of preparing for you all this week. So here's again another bird. You'll notice that this has some stripes. So you get to see like just different classifications. So if you're thinking the nature piece, categorizing different types of birds, right, is one idea. If you're interested in that, or other animals. Here's a side shot of another kind of bird there. His is a cool one. I actually got a cardinal. You guys see that? So here's one bird on this side, but I was actually able to get this cardinal. He stopped by as well. So again, I don't have to be here watching it. I just use my camera and those sensors to pick up whenever a bird lands, and it does all the the picture taking and the storage. So another bird. Here's so you can see different types of birds, different types of species, all during the different times of day, all different views and angles. Here's a bird that's kind of looking out. Here's another one, etc. So I'm really just kind of showing you just. I think I'm back to I think I'm back here. So. So that's really that's really it. Let me go back to my presentation real quick. This next slide. So, whoops. Let me do this. So, in summary, right, what was the presentation about? Well, we made a bird watcher using a Raspberry Pi, a camera, and a motion sensor. Why? Or because I wanted to see when birds would arrive at the bird feeder, and we learned how to use hardware and software. Use a Raspberry Pi, and the software that I used to collect that data was using a software language called a Python. And I learned how to program the motion camera and tell the camera to take pictures. If I had more time, what other things could I do? Well, I could, maybe write some software and put some technology to tell me, how much food is left, in the feeder, how many birds ate that day, and maybe I want to graph, what time, right, where, was breakfast or lunch or dinner the most popular times, and then maybe I could do some bird categorization and maybe try to figure out what are the most popular birds that visit. So these are just some added projects, right? In this case, but I also want you guys to know that Listen, there's cameras all over the world that show animals and fish living in their natural habitat. You can certainly search and visit. I think I have maybe a website to show if we have time. But again, you can look at, if you're into animals and nature, you can focus on that aspect. If you're into sensors, if you want to get into engineering and sensors, you can, be an engineer and develop some of those technologies that capture data and do all kinds of remote sensing. Or you can write software that collects that data from those sensors and sends it up to the cloud for engineers and scientists to analyze that data. So I'm just kind of hopefully trying to convey just different avenues, right? Depending on what you're interested in, how you can impact and and grow in those various areas. And so I just want to thank you, tell you to do good, get good grades, do well, maintain a good reputation for your teachers, because they're the ones, guys, that's going to be writing referrals to you to get scholarships, to get grants, to find some of those internships. So you want to, be known as a good, hardworking student, good reputation. And lastly, hey, we need you, right? There's room for you. There's opportunity. There's space, and so I want to encourage you to pursue a career in the sciences and in the engineering field. So I think that may be my time. I want to thank you guys so much, and I'll turn it back over.
All right, awesome. Wow, that was just amazing. So I do have a question for you, Mr. Canty.
Okay.
As far as your career journey, where did you start off, and did your STEM career take you in any unexpected directions, or did you set the vision and set the goal, and the path has been pretty aligned with your expectations?
Yeah, sure. Very good question. So I really got interested in science and technology when I was a young person, right? There was this movie out called the not Close. Was it Close Encounters of the Third Kind? It was like this, this alien race, and they communicated with Earth through music. And so I was always kind of interested, in science and music and technology. And so I grew up in Philadelphia, and kind of been in this math program there. But I went but let me say this though. I went to Lincoln University. I got a degree in mathematics. Okay. But I wanted you guys to know, when I was in 4th and 5th grade, I struggled in math. I struggled with the word problems. And my mom got me a tutor. His name was Mr. Richard, who helped me understand word problems. Once it clicked for me, I was off to the races. So I went to Lincoln. I got a degree in math. I was blessed to be able to get an internship. My first job out of college was at NASA. If you're here in Maryland, that's at the Goddard Space Flight Center over in Greenbelt, Maryland. So I went there. I was doing satellite communications, right? So there's some data, and data has to come from this, from the satellite down to the Earth. So that whole thing about communications, definitely intrigued me. And then I moved on real quick over to another company called Raytheon. That's when I started doing some software development. And then I moved over to AT&T, just doing some software development. Now I'm a technical sales guy. I'm involved in the Internet of Things and 5G. You might see some of those commercials, but that's all about, again, connectivity, faster, and things like that. So we connect cars, we connect traffic lights, we connect all kinds of sensors. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you definitely did.
Okay.
And we did have time for you to share that website that you wanted to share.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And and also if I may add too, because I think some of the other questions were, hey, how do I get involved in different groups? I used to be a coach in robotics. And so I would strongly encourage, wherever you are, see if there's like a local robotics team. There's VEX, so the National Society of Black Engineers has a program called VEX Robotics. There's First Lego. I was a coach with the First Lego team. See if your school has a programming club or some kind of robotics club that you can get connected to. So here's the site. Oops, let me go over here. Wait, I got to move this one. Give me a second. Okay, here we go. All right. So there's this website, right, called EarthCam, earthcam.com. And the cool thing about EarthCam is you'll see like across the world, there's just camera feeds, right, that you can just click on, and you'll get a live real-time feed of those, of that camera. It's very similar to the back, to my backyard feeder. So that's just called earthcam.com. Here's a list of like all the different sites that you can pick on. There was one of them I wanted to quickly show. It was here it is. So again, for those of us that may be in the Baltimore, Maryland area, this is a live shot of the aquarium up in Baltimore. Come on, is it showing show? Here we go, Shark Cam, right there. So this is at the aquarium. They have this thing called the Shark Cam, and this is just a live feed into the aquarium, into that particular exhibit there. So here's one for tropical fish. Yeah. So there we go. Yeah. So again, this is all at the Baltimore Aquarium. Okay. So you can just have a lot of fun, right? And so not unlike what what I just showed you with the bird feeder. So the technology is out there. Again, the connectivity, the creativity, and all of that is really, I think, prime opportunity, for the students. So does that help?
Yes, I certainly do think it helps. And with that being said, I think that we can go ahead and close out the session. We want to thank you so much for sharing your passion for STEM and all of these great tips and resources for you. So.
Hey, my pleasure, Carlin. Thank you, and much success to the students that are watching. So thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Alrighty, and with that, we will be heading into our next session, you guys.
Thank you so much, Carlin. That was so cool. I don't like birds, but I thought that was pretty cool, setting it up in all the different ways you can use sensors if you like animals, right? So if you like animals and you can like technology, that's a way to combine your love for animals and technology. So I'm a firm believer that there is a STEM area for anything you're interested in. Just look it up. Do programs like SEM Link so you can find out what those are. So I am going to announce the next speaker. Excuse me, because I probably am mispronouncing her last name, so she'll correct it. But Hannah Tsai. So she is a genetic counseling student, and this is a field that's really, really important, but not too many people know about it. So I'm really happy that Hannah could join us, and I'm going to bring her in now. Good afternoon.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you all right. Thank you so much for making time. I was so excited when I saw you signed up.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Like you said, genetic counseling is not the most well-known career out there, so I'd be very happy to speak about it more today.
Okay. So are you going to share a screen? Okay, because I want to make sure your screen is up before I log out.
Yeah. Second. Can you let me know if the slides are being shown?
Okay, I'm about to tell you at your screen, and we can see the slides.
Okay, what about now?
Yeah, we can see them. So I'm
Okay.
going to come out, and I'll still be around if there are any problems. Okay.
Sounds good. Let me get my pointer. Can you still see my screen?
Yes, we can still see your screen. Yeah.
Great. So my name is Hannah. I'm a genetic counseling student at Northwestern University. Today I'll be talking about genetic counseling and what does a genetic counselor do. So the goals for today is to really define a couple roles of a genetic counselor. I'll talk a little bit about genes and genetics. I'll talk about what is genetic counseling, and I have a pedigree exercise that we can all do together. In the end, I'll address any questions you may have, and we can go from there. So what is a genetic counselor? A genetic counselor is actually a healthcare provider who is specialized in both medical genetics and counseling. So we help patients and families understand their genetic information. Oh, where'd it go? Sorry about that. So we help patients and families understand their genetic information and how their information can impact their overall health. And we do this by collecting family health history and providing their risk assessment. And we also provide additional psychosocial support and counseling to patients and families regarding their genetic testing results. So let's break it down a little bit further. What am I talking about when I'm talking about genetic information? So we really have to go into genes and genetics. We all have genes in our bodies. This may be a review for some of you, if not most of you. And genes are basically instructions telling our bodies what to do and what to make. We have genes for how our eyes should be seeing, for how our heart should be pumping, and how strong our bones should be. And we know that these genes can be passed down from one generation to another. So going from your grandfather to your mother and perhaps to yourself. And we call this hereditary. So what's interesting about our genetic information is that we can actually have spelling changes in our instructions. And these changes are normal, they're completely harmless. And that's actually what makes us unique. If I were to look at your genomic information compared to mine, they would be different. And that's because we're not exact copies of each other. And that's where the diversity comes from. However, sometimes some genetic changes can be bad and known to cause a genetic condition or even increase a person's chance of developing a certain types of diseases or becoming sick. And this is where a genetic counselor can come in and help these families to look at their family history and maybe trying to find a potential genetic cause to their condition. So this is the question for everyone. If you want to type it in the chat, can anybody name a genetic condition that they've either heard of before or learned in their classes? Let's see. I'll give you a couple seconds. I think it's taking a couple seconds, but I can name a few. You probably know of some of these. Some common genetic conditions can include sickle cell anemia, and this is when a person's red blood cells is shaped a little bit differently, and that impacts their red blood cells' ability to carry oxygen to different areas of our bodies. Another common genetic condition is cystic fibrosis. You may have heard of this. Individuals with cystic fibrosis can have really sticky mucus that makes it difficult for them to breathe. Another common condition is called familial hypercholesterolemia. It's a really big word basically describing high cholesterol that runs in the family, which may have an underlying genetic cause to them. There are many more genetic conditions that are out there, as well as many more genetic conditions that we don't know about and are being discovered as we go. So what happens in a genetic counseling session is that a genetic counselor will ask the patients about their family history and the health of their family members. because we know that genes can be passed down from one generation to another. Genetic counselors use family trees, or what we call a pedigree, to find clues about what can be going on in the patient's families. And ultimately, a family history is the best indication for a genetic condition. And family history can actually help us identify individuals most at risk of carrying a genetic change and whether genetic testing is appropriate for them. So I thought today it would be a fun exercise to do a pedigree together. Before I do that, I wanted to walk you all through it. This may be familiar to some of you. This may be the first time you're seeing this, but in the clinic, we actually draw this in real time. We ask questions and we draw them out to get a better picture of what could be going on. So we always follow the arrow. For example, today we're seeing Zoe in the clinic. Circles for girls, squares for guys for now. So Zoe's 23. We put the information underneath their symbol. Zoe is our patient today, so we put an arrow next to her. We use bracket to indicate siblings. So we know that Zoe has a younger brother who is 21. Since they share the same mom and dad, we go ahead and draw a line up and connect mom and dad together with the horizontal line. We know that dad is 52, mom is 50. Going to mom's side, we don't have any information, or she's actually the only child, so we don't have any information regarding aunts or uncles on that side. We go ahead and draw it up and connect grandpa and grandma together, as well as their age. So going to dad's side, we know that dad has a sister, and let's call her Shelly, to Zoe, and Shelly is 45. She has one daughter who is Daisy, cousin to Zoe, who is 14. So we know that Aunt Shelly and Dad are siblings. We go ahead and do another bracket, and we go up, connecting Grandpa and Grandma together with a line. So their ancestry on the dad side is Peruvian, and the ancestry on the mom side is South Korean. So that's kind of the rundown of what we typically do in the clinic. So in the spirit of Halloween, I thought it would be a fun exercise to do the Addams family tree together. So how I envision this to go is that if you want to take a couple seconds, grab a pen and pencil, we can draw it out together. I have information regarding our patient, Wednesday, that's her name. And I was going to read them out. You can go ahead and draw it out and see whether or not your pedigree looks like mine. It is okay if you make a mistake. My first family pedigree was not the prettiest, but practice makes perfect. So I thought we can go ahead and do it together. I'll give you a couple seconds to get set up, and then we can go from there. All right. So if you're ready, I'm going to read them out and you can draw them out. So we are seeing Wednesday today in the clinic. Wednesday is an 18-year-old girl. So draw a circle and an arrow with the name underneath. She has one younger brother, Pugsley, who bothers her a lot. He is 15 years old. Wednesday, Pugsley has one adopted brother, Thing. So that's my tricky one for you all to see if you know the symbols for that. Wednesday's dad, Gomez, is 35, and her mom, Morticia, is 30, so we're up the next generation. So going to dad's side, Wednesday has one uncle on her dad's side, Uncle Fester. Uncle Fester is 40 years old. When Uncle Fester was 25, he was diagnosed with a condition that allows him to generate electricity. So go ahead and write that down under Uncle Fester. So now we're moving on to the mom side. So on the mom side, Wednesday has one aunt, Aunt Ophelia, who is 25 years old. Aunt Ophelia has one child named Cousin It. So going up the next generation, Morticia and Aunt Ophelia's mom is Granny Frumpy, who is 65 years old. And for ancestry, we know that Wednesday's dad is from Spain, and her mom, Morticia, is European. So that is all we know about the family history. So I'll give you a couple minutes to finish drawing, and then we can compare to see if your pedigree looks like mine. All right, I'm gonna move forward. Oops, there you go. So this is what my family pedigree looks like for the Adams family. So we have our patient today, Wednesday, who is 18 years old. She has a younger brother, Pugsley, who is 15. The adopted sibling thing, that's the tricky one here. We still put individuals who aren't related by blood on the pedigree because they are a part of the family. So we use dashed line drawing down a bracket next to them to indicate that they are adopted. So going up, we have Gomez, who's 35, Morticia, who's 30. Going to the dad's side, we have Uncle Fester, who is 40. He was diagnosed with a condition that generates electricity. Disclaimer, it's not an actual genetic condition, so please don't tell anybody that is genetic counseling students that this is a genetic condition. It's actually fictional, but he was affected, so we go ahead and color that in to indicate that information. So going up to Gomez's parents, so Wednesday's grandparents on her dad's side, we don't have a lot of information. Sometimes that happens in the clinic, and that is totally fine. You work with what you have to try and find the clues that would be the best helpful. So go ahead to mom's side, Morticia mom's side. We have an aunt who is Aunt Ophelia, who is 25. And she has a daughter, cousin It. And Granny Frumpy is on the mom's side. We put ancestry at the top. Where did the ancestor come from? So Spain and European for mom's side. And just to put faces to circles and squares, this is what it looks like. And there are actually many other pedigree symbols that I didn't cover today that it would be interesting for you to explore if you want to learn more about the topic. So of course, not everyone would identify with the gender that they're born with. We also have symbols for that. Fraternal twins and identical twins. For people who have passed, we do a cross to indicate their passing. There are many more out there. If you're interested, I can definitely let you know all the information. And of course, practice makes perfect. I would encourage you all to go home, ask your parents if you can draw the family tree together. You can ask permission, ask about who are in your family, how you're all related, how old your family members are. You can ask about where your ancestors are from and go from there. So thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have for me. And yeah. Oh, Down syndrome. I just saw that. Yes, that is a genetic condition.
There I am. Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much for that presentation. We always love highlighting STEM careers that may not be as well known or well talked about, because we know when we're talking STEM careers, there's always those ones that are said over and over again. But one thing we like to say at STEMlink is that STEM is so expansive, you can literally do anything.
I agree.
Yes. So my question for you is, what would be some ways for teens to, or youth and teens to figure out if this is of interest to them? Even I saw a connection to math with the diagrams personally, because I feel like in math class, there is that aspect of putting together diagrams, but you can share more of what are some indicators that this would be a good STEM pathway for youth and teens.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think if you're interested in learning more about genetic counseling, shadowing a genetic counselor would give you the best idea of what it actually looks like in the clinic. And one thing that I didn't talk about is that genetic counseling doesn't necessarily have to be in the clinic. We actually have laboratory genetic counselors that look at people's genetic information and do more research on those to figure out whether or not there is a disease-causing genes that are out there that haven't been identified. And like you said, STEM is so widespread. I myself didn't think that I was going into genetic counseling after I had graduated from college. So it's kind of exploring what your interests are, if you're interested in medicine, but don't necessarily want to kind of touch people or, do the things that doctors do. Genetic counseling is something that you can consider because we do a lot more education and management standpoint.
Got it. And another question that I have is, of course, what do you enjoy the most about this STEM area? What is your inspiration and passion, as I've asked other presenters?
I am so sorry. I think I did not catch that.
Oh, okay. So I asked, what is your inspiration and passion for this STEM area?
You are not.
Uh-oh. It looks like one of us is having technical issues. Please hold on for a minute as we see which end it is on. But as we see if we can reconnect, this is such a great activity that Hannah shared. This is such a great activity that Hannah shared for youth and teens to do with their families. When we talk about genes, as was shared, it can be an indicator of back. Oh, okay, we got reconnected.
Sorry about that.
Oh no, you're good. It happens.
I did not catch your question, and I think I caught you mid-sentence, so I can jump in whenever.
Yeah, so I was just asking, what is your favorite part about genetic counseling? Where do you get your inspiration and passion from?
That is a great question. I think for me is really helping out family members to try and find an answer for them, because for a lot of the families, they've been going to doctors, seeing a lot of specialists, and just not having an idea of what could be going on. And for some individuals, this may be a really long journey for them, and having a concrete answer, either through genetic testing or just looking at their family history, this can be really helpful for them. And that is really where I draw my inspiration from, is from the patients and their families.
That is a really good response. And even to what you said about there being diseases that we're still kind of finding out, from my understanding, when we're talking about genetics and DNA, there's a lot that we just don't know. That scientists are still trying to figure out. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny that you brought it up, because we always say that technology is way ahead of what we know about genetics. So the technology can be really good at reading our genetic information, but not a lot of research is being done to make that connections with genetic changes and whether or not it can cause a certain type of diseases. And what's more is that what we know in regards to genetic research, a lot of it is being done on majority Caucasian populations. So I think a lot of information should also be coming from participants who are of a diverse background, so we can get a better understanding of what can be happening for everybody and how can we make genetic information useful for different people from different types of background.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hannah, for that presentation. As I said, I really hope that youth and teens who see it will do the activity. And with that, thank you for your time. We'll be heading into...
But before you go, do you have any sites that we could put in the chat so anyone could practice? Because your activity was really cool, where people could practice if they're interested in genetic counseling. I can't remember what that thing you had. What was it called? I'm sorry.
My pedigree?
Pedigree, yes. Do you have any resource you can give us in chat where people can do their online pedigree, practice pedigrees?
Yeah, definitely. So there are resources out there that are free. I can definitely send you a couple links. You can also ask me questions with my emails, and I'll send those to you, and maybe you can share that information.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
All right. So with that, we'll be heading into our next breakout session. Now, if you have not had a chance to get up and stretch, definitely recommend that you do so right now. We're going to give our brains a little break, a little fun break, I should say, from taking in all of this awesome information about different STEM pathways and different STEM careers that have been shared with you all today. And so I have a game for us. I just have to pull up my screen. Let's see. And okay, so
your screen is up. I shared it.
Okay, so with this game, you are going to get a series of zoomed in photos, and you are tasked with guessing what the object is. So we are just going to go ahead and get started by me hitting play. And it's going. Yep. Hopefully it's not going too fast for you guys. And also, also put on a little music for you all, if it plays. Some of these images are easier than others.
So, Carlin, we're supposed to look at the images and guess what they are in the chat?
Yes.
Okay.
I was trying to pull up some music for us. Not coming. And then you can put your guesses for what we're seeing in the chat. Okay, we're getting close to the end of the series of photos. Okay, so before we get to the answers, do we have any guesses for these zoomed in photos? Yes, that's a good guess. There was a cookie shown. Do we have any more guesses for, what about this image? Yes, another good guess. There was a ladybug that was shown. These are all good guesses. Yes to the beach ball. Yes to the puppy, the dog. And we're almost finished with the last few images. There was an owl, but not a candle. Okay, and that was the last one. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn off our music. With that, these are all good guesses. You got most of them. The candle was actually an apple, but there was a pumpkin and braces. And so, with that being said, the last one, which is on the screen right now, is an elephant. So with that being said, we did have a prize for this game, and Jay Melville, you are the winner of the prize. So you will be receiving a gift card for you to be able to purchase. You will be receiving a $40 gift certificate to the My Gyms online store. So you'll be able to purchase cool things from there, cool STEM related things from there. So please provide your email so that you can claim your prize, and I will follow up with you. At this time, while we are transitioning, I would also like to mention that we will have a survey for you to fill out on this STEM event. And we please ask that you fill it out because it really helps us be able to bring you these programs and provide you the type of content that you want to learn and know about with STEM. So I will be dropping that link in the chat box. And so while we are taking our break, definitely share in the chat what STEM area or STEM demo did you enjoy the most. We would love to hear. And with that, there are also some links that were dropped from There were also
I dropped the links that Hannah shared with us. Hannah shared with us about the genetic counseling. So, Carlin, while you are putting in the chat the link to the survey, can you share a few of the upcoming programs that we're having and how people can stay connected to us to find out about future events?
Absolutely. So, with it being October, I love that the presentation that we just saw actually talked about what STEM programs we're going to be offering this month. Because we will be talking about genetics and DNA for our Teen Science Cafes. And so our first Teen Science Cafe will actually be taking place this upcoming week, this Wednesday. It is entitled Little Fish, Big Science. And we are going to be looking into the study of human genetic diseases and how zebrafish are used in the research of these human genetic diseases and actually finding solutions to them. So our speaker for that cafe is going to be Dr. Jen Phillips, who is a senior researcher at the University of Oregon. And so we are very excited to hear more about her work and studying a rare genetic disease and using zebrafish in her, experiments and research. After that, our next Teen Science Cafe will be on DNA, and that will be taking place October 27th. And that will feature Dr. Chanel Tolson, who is a molecular biologist and a cell and molecular biologist. And she does a lot of work around public health and science communication. And so in that cafe, teens will be able to hear about, we'll be able to hear more about how looking into DNA is connected to how we identify diseases that might be passed down from our family members. And also, all living or once living organisms contain DNA. So we'll be hearing a little bit more about that. And then finally, our last program for October is our STEM in the City. And that will actually be about, that will be more about looking at those places around the earth that you can't really get to that you can't really hop in a car and visit or even jump on a plane and fly to, right? I'm talking about, the surface of the sun, things that are happening in our oceans. And our presenter for that cafe is going to be Danae Carlis, who works at NOAA, which is the largest organization in the country that studies and looks at, these different areas of our Earth in order to be able to make observations about the changes that we see in our Earth and in our environment, because we know that that happens over time. And we know that it's important to be able to note these changes because, humans live on this planet, but we also have plants and animals that live on this planet. And so many things that live on this planet to survive and thrive, we want to continue to do that. So we have to make note of the changes that take place in our environment so that hopefully we can mitigate any negative impacts or negative changes that are happening. So that STEM in the City will take place September, October 30th, and that will be from 12:30 to 2 p.m. Our Teen Science Cafes take place on Wednesdays from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m., and those are Eastern times. And so if any of these topics interest you, then I will drop the link for you to be able to sign up and join us for those other STEM programs from SimLink.
Thank you, Carlin. And can you also drop like the link to our YouTube channel? So although this career won't be on the YouTube channel, maybe we'll put it later. But all of our events, Teen Science Cafe, previous cafes, if any of them have a topic that spark your interest, you can go watch it on our YouTube channel and listen and learn from the speaker. And so in closing, because we have had a great few hours of learning about various STEM careers, first of all, I want to thank Carlin for putting this all together and organizing all the speakers and getting their info and just keeping them informed. We hope that you have met somebody that will have seen somebody in this virtual world that has a career that has sparked your interest or guide you to a search to find something similar. As Carlin said, be sure to fill out the survey so we'll get information about what you thought and what you learned so we can continue to do these programs for you, continue to get funding, but most importantly, find out how it benefits you and how we can keep providing quality programs for you. Congratulations, Jay, on your winning your prize. STEM Gym Center is a great site, and I know you're going to find something cool that you would like to purchase from that site. And with that, I just want to thank all the exhibitors, thank our sponsors, in the Loop Program Success, and everyone that donated to our Back to STEM fundraising campaign, which made this event possible. Because although it's free to you, it's a cost for the event. So we appreciate every funder, every donor that provide us with the resource to continue to do this for you. And so I want to thank you all so much for joining. We hope that we had a great day of unveiling potential through exposure for you virtually. And we hope that you learned something to continue to spark your interest in STEM, but most importantly, to guide you on your own career path for your STEM journey. Because as a chemical engineer, it is my hope that every kid that attends one of our events actually gets the guidance, the information that they need, the tools, tips, and strategies to successfully pursue a STEM career. And the first step of that is knowing what you want to do and then knowing what you want to major in college. And so thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and be sure to look at the various resources in the chat for the topics that you were interested in. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next SEM Link event.